If you struggle with anxiety, doubt, fear, overwhelm, or emotional paralysis, or if you're interested in what can be learned from myth and archetypal symbolism to improve our mental health and resilience, then this is for you. My name's Hazel Gale. I'm a former therapist turned author and creator of the Betwixt app, and this video is part of a short series exploring the empowering lessons to be learned from the myth of Psyche and Eros. If you want a more detailed rendition of that story, check out the first video in this series, but you don't need to do that because I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. So here's where we're at. Psyche, a mortal woman, finds herself thrown in a dungeon by the goddess Aphrodite and set 4 impossible tasks in order to regain her freedom. In terms of archetypal symbology and Jungian psychology, these tasks can be understood as a representation of 4 deepening stages of individuation. The process by which we differentiate ourselves from our parents and family and from conditioned rules and expectations in order to become who we actually are. Against all odds, Psyche succeeded in the first 2 tasks thanks to help from an army of friendly ants and a river reed momentarily possessed by a minor god. Aphrodite, who's setting these tasks, does not want Psyche to succeed. And so she's getting increasingly vexed by all of this. As a result, she decides to go big with the next task. Psyche is told that she must fill a crystal flask with water from the River Styx, a dark and dangerous river at the top of a craggy mountain guarded by fierce snake-like dragons. The River Styx divides the land of the living from the underworld, the land of the dead. So Psyche climbs the slope, utterly hopeless, and stands paralysed by the fear of this terrible scene. The waters seem to themselves likewise saying, "Away, away, what wilt thou do? Fly, fly, or else thou wilt be slain." In that moment, a magnificent bird descends from the sky, an eagle sent by Zeus. And it tells Psyche that there's no way a mortal woman could get close to these waters that even the gods are afraid of. But the eagle can. With its ability to fly over the heads of the dragons and swoop down to secure the water quickly and safely, Zeus's eagle claims the prize and Psyche succeeds once again. Now on the surface, this task might seem similar to the previous one, in which Psyche was sent to collect a tuft of golden wool from the fearsome and dangerous golden fleeced sheep. But in other ways, it's the opposite, or at least at the opposite end of one continuum. The sheep, strong, aggressive and competitive, represent repressed masculine energies. The River Styx, with its deep, dark, fearsome waters, represents the feminine shadow. A quick reminder that the terms masculine and feminine are not the same as male and female. No matter our gender, we all have both masculine and feminine aspects of self. I'll say more about this in another video at some point because it's really fascinating. But in brief, the reason certain traits are considered either masculine or feminine is because the associations are deeply embedded in, I think, all known cultures, mythologies, philosophical and religious traditions dating back thousands of years. Basically, no matter where you're looking, you'll find that on the one side, masculinity is linked with the sky, the sun, daytime, fire, dryness, and also conscious thought, assertiveness, and outwardness, while femininity is associated with the earth or the underworld, the moon, nighttime, water, moisture, fertility, and also emotion, creativity, unconscious thought, introspection, and inwardness. Crucially, neither grouping is superior. Both ends of these continua require the other in order to exist and to have meaning, and they play off one another too. Think of the famous yin-yang symbol in Taoism, where the dark and light sides twist into one another and there's a little drop of each in the center of its counterpart. This symbol represents a lot, but we could sum it up with words like harmony, unity, and balance. These things being the ultimate goal in Taoism, leading to, or so the theory goes, enlightenment. So while the second of Psyche's tasks was about confronting the masculine shadow, the third is about facing the deeper, darker, feminine shadow. In Jungian psychology, the River Styx, as the border between the land of the living and the land of the dead, represents the border between conscious and unconscious. Its waters represent the great water of life, of creativity, cycles, and regeneration. To capture this water, as Psyche is tasked to do, is to capture primal energies and shape them through our own personality. Put simply, to live life as yourself, your whole authentic self, rather than going through the motions and being what the world expects you to be. This is a difficult thing to do, to say the least. What's required for Psyche to succeed in this task is for her to begin the creative act of birthing a new version of self, which necessitates the death of an old version of self. And that's why it's so hard. In order to make any change, we always have to let go of something, and that is fundamentally frightening. To kick a habit, such as smoking or drinking or overeating, means letting go of a coping mechanism. To overcome a fear or phobia, no matter how limiting, means the death of who you once were and the end of something you once thought necessary for safety. To grow simply is to relinquish or at least move beyond the fear of change. So in particular, the shadow content that Psyche must face here is that associated with fear. Psyche's task can be seen as a journey into these emotional depths, where she must gather and bring back the waters of understanding and insight, transforming unconscious fears into conscious awareness. Her success represents the ability to face the most paralyzing aspects of the psyche without being overcome. So how does she do this? The eagle's ability to soar at a height and to use its keen eye to target the water and retrieve it safely is key. Had Psyche just waded into the River Styx herself, she would surely have met her end. And while in reality fearful shadow content is unlikely to do us that kind of harm directly, it can overcome us. We can lose ourselves in our fears. We can drown in them if we're not careful. So the eagle motif in this myth reminds us of a few important necessities for this kind of work. First, connection. To ourselves, to others, to a higher spiritual power, or whatever it is that makes sense to us. Notice that, unlike in the second task where the river god guided Psyche to take the right course, here the eagle actually does the job for her. And yes, we're seeing the eagle as an aspect of Psyche's self, but the difference in the nature of the help given is striking, and it underscores the importance of connection when facing the darkest aspects of the unconscious. It reminds us also that it's okay to ask for help. Second, this passage speaks to the importance of taking an objective perspective when dealing with intense negative emotion. In modern psychology, this is known as self-distancing. The act of creating space when considering feelings like fear and shame, as opposed to trying to understand them from the inside while immersed in them, which is much more likely to leave us paralyzed and hopeless. So how can we actually use any of this? Having just talked about the dangers of rushing into shadow work alone, I'm not going to direct you in some kind of deep and difficult process here. But we can use a bit of our own creativity to take a very small and safe step in approaching the emotion of fear. The reason myth, metaphor, and all kinds of narrative are so important in therapy is that the symbolism gets through to us so much better than logic, reason, and stats. The mind is geared up to learn through story. That's how we've always done it. So what if you were to create symbols or scenes to represent your emotions? This is done often and in many different ways in various forms of therapy because it helps people to safely get a handle on feelings like fear. Symbols and metaphors help us to observe our emotions from a distance, just like the eagle did, and to get curious about them rather than feeling sucked into their aqueous depths. So if you feel comfortable, I invite you to think of something that makes you feel nervous, but not terrified. Let's keep this manageable. Think of something that gives you the jitters, like public speaking, dating, or exams. Pause the video if you need a moment to pick something, and just make sure you feel okay working with it before we continue. When you have it, see what comes up as I ask these questions. First, when you think about the object of your fear, what would you call the emotion it evokes? What's the best word for it? It could just be fear, but it might also be nervousness, anxiety, unease, timidity, apprehension, or anything else. Studies show that labeling our emotions reduces their intensity, just as the miller's daughter discovered in Rumpelstiltskin. To name something threatening or controlling is to take away some of its power. So take a moment to find the best term that fits your version of fear. Again, pause the video if you need to. Then, as you tune into that emotion, consider this question. If it lived in a particular part of your body, or outside of your body if that makes more sense to you, where would it live? Chest, stomach, head, heart, or elsewhere? Go with whatever comes to mind. Don't question it. Now, if that feeling had a shape, what shape would it be? Is it spherical, jagged, lumpy? If it had a colour, what would that be? Is it heavy or light? Is it warm or cool? Does it move or is it still? And if it moves, how does it move? Whatever you now have in mind, whether it's a super clear image of this thing or whether it's only a vague sense, just imagine that you can take that emotion and hold it in your hands in front of you. Or if you don't want to touch it, you can imagine that it's floating in the space ahead of you. Close enough to observe, but far enough away that you don't have to feel it right now. And then finally, as you observe your symbol, remind yourself this important thing, that all emotions are valid, natural, helpful, and important, no matter how difficult they can seem sometimes. What's more, all emotions have something to offer if we accept and integrate them rather than try to fight them off. Just as Psyche brought back the waters of understanding and insight by transforming unconscious fears into conscious awareness, you can learn something important from this little drop of the shadow too. So I'll leave you with one final question. You don't need an answer right away, but you might be surprised by how easily it comes. Either way, just allow yourself to get curious about this. If that emotion that you're observing right now were actually here to give you some kind of gift, a message or reminder of something important perhaps, or the gift of something like courage, motivation, or perspective. If that emotion was showing up for a positive purpose, what would its gift be? For Psyche, the gift was the chance to awaken a whole new version of who she was, a stronger, more integrated self, which is what we'll be exploring in the next and final video in this little series. I'll see you there. As always, I really hope this helps. If you enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can find it too. And finally, if you'd like to take an epic journey through a magical world in the name of personal growth, then you can download Betwixt the Mental Health Game, which is available on the iOS App Store and Google Play.